All right, so this is going to be a quick lesson on IXL Unit U3a, which is converting from degrees, right, to radians, and going from radians to degree. Okay, so we're talking about angles here, okay, and we want to look at that unit circle that we had before, right? So the unit circle was, let me draw a better circle than that. Let me come up here. There we go. Okay. So we want to talk about having a radius of 1. Okay, that's what makes this the unit circle. All right, so we get a little radius of 1 here. And the one I wanted to remind you of is 360 degrees around here was equal to 2 pi. So we also know that 180 degrees, then, half of that, would just be equal to pi. So that is the conversion factor that we're going to use to go from radians to degrees. 180 degrees equals 1 pi. So if I want to convert something like 90 degrees and I want to know how many radians that is, I'm going to multiply, right, by a conversion factor. And I need the degrees to be on the bottom because I need them to cancel. So how many radians in degrees? Pi over 180. Okay, so we divide 90 by 180, we get 1/2. That reduces to 1/2. The degrees cancel, and I'm just left with pi over 2, right? That's what 90 over 180 reduces to, 1 over 2. The degrees would cancel, and you're just left with pi over 2 radians. So 90 degrees equals pi over 2 radians. And that should make some sense to you, right? Because if I come over here and say, all right, well, if this is 180 degrees and that's pi distance, then this distance to here would be half of that, and half of pi is just pi over 2. Okay, so that's how you convert from degrees to radians, and then vice versa. If you had, say, pi over 4 radians, right, and you wanted to convert that into degrees, you would multiply by a conversion factor that puts radians on the bottom, which is there's 180 degrees, which is what we're looking for, degrees, in pi radians. So now the radians cancel, right? The pi's cancel, and I'm left with 180 over 4, which is just 45 degrees, and that would be your answer. So that's how you convert from degrees to radians and radians to degrees. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple of IXL problems that I posted in here. Okay, let's see. We'll take a look at this one. So we have how many degrees is 3 pi over 10 radians? So we have 3 pi over 10 right here, and that is radians. So we need to multiply by a conversion factor that has radians on the bottom and degrees on the top, which we know is 180 degrees in pi radians. Okay, and if you're confused on that, you need the pi's to always cancel if you're looking for degrees. You need the pi's to stay if you're looking for radians. Okay, so now it's just a little bit of a cancellation game here. So the pi's cancel, right? The radians cancel, so we're left with degrees. And now I have 3 times 180 divided by 10. Or you could do it in a different order if you want. You could do 180 divided by 10, which you know is 18. And then 3 times 18 would be 54 degrees. Okay, so that's how to go. That was like one of the problems up in the 70 to 80 SMART score. So the only reason it's harder is just because the fractions are a little bit harder to do. Okay, and the last one I'll do is to just go with a negative, right? Negatives, don't get confused. They're still just talking about, radians. You just have to remember the negative. Okay, so negative 72 degrees. How many radians is negative 72 degrees? So we have negative 72 here. And we need to multiply by a conversion factor that puts degrees on the bottom. So that's pi radians, right, over 180. So you take 72 and you can reduce it, right? 9 goes into 72, right? 8 times, and 9 goes into 80 20 times. And you could keep reducing that fraction. It's really just, let me write it out for you. where's my cursor? There it is. It's really just this, right? Negative 72 pi, right? The degrees cancel over 180. All right, and then you just have to reduce this. So we know 9 goes into there 8 times, and we know 9 goes into here 20 times. So we have negative 8 over 20, but we know we can reduce that, right? Because 4 goes into there twice, so I have negative 2, and 4 goes into there 5 times. 5, and don't forget your pi. And there's your answer, okay? And that's how you convert from degrees into radians. Okay, so that would be your answer you would type in, and you're good to go. All right, let me know if you have any questions.